Welcome game design students. In this video we're going to apply UV mapping coordinates to the crate model that we've already created. We're going to unwrap the UVs and create a UV template, open that in Photoshop, and then use Photoshop and images of actual wood to texture this object and make it look very realistic, so we can import it into Unreal for use in a game. This process can be applied to any object for any material: metal, wood, cement, concrete, stone, just about anything. But the common factor is that the object you're working with has to have UV coordinates applied to it and a UV template generated. So let's get started. As we said before, after we model, in preparation for UV mapping, we need to delete any polygons that are not going to be visible. So if you haven't already done that, go through your object and delete any polygons that are not going to be visible. Notice I deleted all of these edge polygons on the ends here, including the ones on the handle on the ends, and these on the back side. So go through and do that if you haven't already done so. The next thing we need to do is switch to the UV Editing Workspace. So come over here to the Workspace's pull-down menu on the right-hand side of your editor and click UV Editing. And that will bring up the UV editor, and we have a window here, and we also have a toolkit over here, along with some tool settings in the Attributes editor. And the object that we select will have the UVs displayed over here in the UV editor. And they're all going to look the same now because they don't have the exact coordinates applied to them. So we're going to have to do each of these objects one at a time. Let's start with the top. Now I'm going to select the top in object mode, and then I'm going to come up to display, hide, and I'm going to hide all the other objects that are not selected. That way I don't have to work around them. And I always find it helpful to use my move gizmo or my move tool while I'm doing this, so I know which axis is which. So let's switch to face mode, and let's start with the top and the bottom face of this object. Notice these two faces are aligned on the y-axis, and you can also see them selected over here in the UV editor. And you can see in the UV editor that we are in the face mode. You can switch modes here as well. So the first thing we need to do is apply the UV coordinates. So come up to UV in your main menu, click it, find a planar, and bring up the tool options by clicking on the little square. And make sure you're projecting on the y-axis, and then click Project. And you will see that now you have a big giant square. Those UVs have been extracted, and they now cover this entire panel. Now this is still not correct, so we need to turn on what's called the checker map here to make sure it's going to work correctly. The checker map allows us to make sure that our UVs are not distorted. So these checkers should be square. They are not. So we're going to use the scale tool and scale in the correct direction to make sure that they are square. And then we're going to scale the whole thing down and switch to the Move tool and move it out of this area. And then I'm going to turn off the checker texture, and I'm going to select the two ends this time, like so. Here they are in the UV editor. And we're going to go to UV, and this time we're going to select the Z-axis and click Project. And then we need to zoom in on them, turn on the checker map, and scale appropriately to make the squares square. And then we need to scale the whole thing down and move it. We can turn off the checker map now and move it over here next to the board that we just unwrapped. Now these should basically be the correct size so that they fit together. There are also two objects here, two mesh objects on top of each other on both of these. Now since they're not going to be right next to each other, we can simply leave them that way and they can share the same texture. So let's just leave them like that for now. And let's do the sides now. And these are projected in the x-axis. So I'm going to go to UV, bring up the tool options for planar, select the x-axis, click project, turn on the checker map, zoom in, and scale until the checkers are square. And then scale in appropriately. And I'm going to rotate these because they belong on the side of the board anyway. To make rotation easier, we can double click on the rotate tool and turn on snapping. And then we're going to move these over, turn off the checker map, and scale them appropriately until they're about the same size as the edge of the board. And I think I might scale that out and make it a little wider. It's basically supposed to sort of match the relative dimensions of the board, the actual mesh object. And then the next thing I would do, I'm going to move this over to give myself a little more room. And now we're going to unhide everything by coming to Display, Show, All, and we're going to select another object. Let's try one of these 2x4s on the top. And then we just repeat the process with the next object. So I'm going to select this board, and I'm going to switch to face mode, grab that top face, go to UV, planar, and I know that this is the y-axis. Apply the checker map. Now I can see that I'm not scaling it in the right direction that time, so I've got to go this way. And then move it out of the way. This time I'm going to move these up here. And then we're going to grab these on the sides. These are in the z-axis. And we just keep repeating the process for each of these objects that make up this mesh. For the cylindrical handles, all we really need to do is just select them, and the UVs will be applied right here. We can turn on the checker map, zoom in a little bit, and then scale it appropriately here. We can switch to face mode in the UV editor, and then scale it so that the squares are square. And scale it down some, and then I'm going to move it up here. Now, in the end, all of the UVs have to be packed back into this middle area so we can create our template. And I'm just moving these out here so they don't get all over each other before we pack them back in. So I'm going to do one more for you, and then we will let you do it on your own, and I'll come back and show you how to render the UV template. So I'm going to select this board this time. And actually I'm going to switch to object mode first and then hide everything else so I can see the back side. Switch back to face mode, Grab that face and that face. Those are on the x-axis. These are on the y-axis. Wrong direction. And then I can select these here if I want to. I know that they will be on the z-axis. Turn off the checker map. And I'm going to rotate. I'm going to leave these as is. Put them here. Scale this down some more. Grab both of these. Remember, there are two of them there. Rotate them. And then we would just simply move on to the next piece. Switch back to object mode, show all, and select the next piece. And so I'm going to let you do that. I'll come around and help you. And in the next video, I will show you how to generate the UV template. And I'll see you then.